Hey everybody, I'm Tim, here to take you once again behind the curtain of the cigar industry. You're watching Cigars Daily. Hey, I'm going to tell you guys a whole lot more when you check out this video on Rumble and the community on Cigars Daily Plus. Here's a question for you up front. If you could sit down in a cigar factory surrounded by bales of aged tobacco with Dunbarton's Steve Saka and have him blend a cigar for you, what kind of cigar would that be? What kind of blend would it be? What kind of wrapper would you want it to have? Strength, flavor profile, and I invite you to put this down in the comments below. And see, the thing about Steve Saka is that as a cigar maker, he has cleared out this lane on the cigar making road as the guy who does this sin compromiso, without compromise. He's got a catalog filled with cigars that are particularly delectably balanced and complex, have this high level of amazing construction, and ring all the bells as whether you're just getting into cigars or you're a seasoned veteran of the cigar loving world. And certainly when it comes to cigar shops and purveyors, there are a lot of people who are itching to work with Steve Saka to get something exclusive made, partly because Steve does this so excellently, and partly because the excellence behind his cigars drives this demand that's it's the only brand that's got that kind of demand right now. Steve has worked with some of the coolest projects in the country. I wrote a list down so that I could remember even just a handful of these. Cigars like the U-Boat and Barba Amarilla. Barba Amarilla. It's yellow in Spanish. The Don Durma, the Halogen, the Khan Alam, Red Meat Lovers, which was originally an exclusive, the Fiddlehead. He's done a lot more, but working with Steve is an opportunity that a lot of cigar shops see to work with a guy who really does this at the elite level of cigar making, because Steve doesn't really accept anything less than exactly what he envisions, and he seems to really have a good vision for a lot of this stuff. And right now, I just got finished working alongside Steve to craft something brand new, a project that's got me all hot and bothered. But in this video, I want to take you inside what it's like to work with Steve. Truly, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the whole experience. And I start this video out by asking you what you would blend if you could blend alongside of Steve. And maybe you picture yourself sitting in that cigar factory with the rolling table in front of you, and there's a lot of tobacco around the table and a chaveta, and it's beautiful and it's guy romantic. But the truth is, there's a hell of a lot more to it than that. In fact, as Steve Saka texted me the other night, this was 9:30 p.m. my time, which means it's after midnight Steve's time. He said, yes, I'm still at work. Anyone that thinks the cigar biz is glamorous is sorely mistaken. And that's really what I want to take you inside of. A process that is as painful logistically as it is, legislatively, regulatorily. It was a hell of a process just to get the stuff done beyond the actual blending of the cigar. And the blending is a little bit of work too. So this is what happened with my project with Steve Saka and what I saw from my end from beginning to, right about now. You see, earlier today, I got tracking information on the project that I started working on with Steve. I'm going to say it was 3 or 4 years ago. Steve says it was 3 years ago. I feel like it was more like 4, but it's really 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. We've been talking about doing something for a very long time, and Steve is in incredibly high demand. And so it turned into, hey, we're going to get this done by the end of the year, or we'll start it at the beginning of next year. And that just kind of rolled into eventually working on the project the bulk of this year, which was exciting to do. But people wonder, and they ask me when I talk to them about this new cigar, they're like, what is it like working with Steve? I mean, he's got sort of a reputation for being a guy that, says exactly what he's thinking, sort of regardless of the consequences a lot of the time. He's brutally honest. He has this personality trait that we refer to as disagreeable, which is actually one of the signs of very accomplished and successful people, but also tends to leave a bad taste in others' mouths. And so Steve is sort of a guy that's loved by many and hated by a few. And my sense is that he's probably just fine with that. When we started working on this project, that's the guy I got to work with. I've been working with Dunbarton since my original post in the cigar industry. That's when I first started getting incredible input and advice from Saka on all kinds of stuff cigars. And this really is like the pinnacle of the reason that I wanted to work with Steve, because while Steve has said some of the most painfully honest and maybe even offensive things that anyone in this industry has physically said directly to me, he's also probably been the primary single biggest source of like wisdom and inspiration and guidance and advice that I've had from a cigar maker one-on-one. I've talked to Steve over the years about a lot of stuff cigars, and for me this project is exciting because he stands out as the guy who knows the most about every part of the cigar industry. You see, I've worked with a lot of cigar makers who are just my absolute heroes in this industry. Cigar makers and factories and people like Jonas Santana from Blackbird, Oliva Cigars, Oscar Valderez, Aganorsa, Eric Espinosa, and even more. This has been so much fun to do, but when it comes to Steve, this dude seems to understand like the actual varietals of tobacco, as well as he understands the blending of the cigar, as well as he understands what makes packaging work, everything down to the different types of papers and printing that you can do on a band and what makes that band stick to the wrapper leaf of a cigar. He spent a long time blogging about cigars, so he knows more about cigar care and like storage and temperature and humidity than most guys I've met. Like I say, he really knows the thing from beginning to end. So for me, this was an opportunity to gain more knowledge from the guy while creating something ultimately spectacularly tasty and good. And the project that we landed on was one called Leche Burra, which if you do a quick internet search, it means donkey's milk. And if that conjures a specific image to your mind, I'll be the first to say, that sucks, because it's not a very appeasing image. But the truth is, this is part of the creative process that Steve and I went through. Like I said, people ask me like, how much input did I have into this cigar? And when it comes to making a blend, an exclusive blend alongside of Saka, it's basically like this. Imagine that you've got like a Michelin 5-star, I don't know how many stars they do on the Michelin thing. You've got a super popular restaurant on the Strip in Vegas. And in that restaurant, you're going to put like one of the world's most renowned chefs in the kitchen. If you were smart, you wouldn't tell that chef exactly what to cook. You wouldn't hand him a menu and say, cook this. You would let that chef's reputation and vision for food guide what you're going to do. And working with Steve Saka is sort of analogous to that. So as we went through the cigar making process, there's a few pieces of the cigar that really have to land. One of them is the actual blend. The other one is the name of the cigar. And then the other one is like the packaging, and in and amidst the name and packaging is the story of the thing and what it represents, really the image that it draws to mind. So I'll start off with the blend. So there are a few ways that I've made cigars over the years with the various factories and cigar makers that I've worked with. One of those ways is occasionally I'll go to a factory or a brand and say, hey, I've got an idea for a brand and a blend. And I'll give them what my vision entails. And this may be like the name and idea behind a cigar, along with the wrapper leaf or some sort of heritage for the blend, something mostly Nicaraguan with this kind of wrapper. Other times I'll go back and say, hey, I'd like to do something that has this kind of strength and this kind of flavor profile, and maybe we're shooting for this kind of wrapper. That's when I come to a cigar maker with input on what I want to do. Then that cigar maker will either send me blends, or I've even sat in the factory and blended them right there before. Occasionally a cigar maker will come to me with like, hey Tim, I really want to make this cigar for you, and I've made it in 3 iterations. Try them, and if you want to do this project with me, that would be fun, and if you don't, no biggie. And those are fun to do as well. But in those exchanges, there's a lot more interchange back and forth. There's a lot more availability to say like, hey, I like this about a cigar, I don't like this, it needs a little bit more of this and less of this, and then you dial the blend in. And that's one thing that can make a cigar take quite a while to put out. This was categorically different working with Saka. So over the years that Steve and I talked about doing this cigar, I thought many times about what kind of Dunbarton blend I would want to do. As I watched his catalog evolve with stuff like Mi Querida, the Sin Compromiso, and now Red Meat Lovers Club, along with a bunch of others, I noticed that this dude blends a lot in bold. He's got a lot of very dark, very rich, very powerful cigars. And then on the other end of it, he's got a couple of blends, a couple of lines that are milder. The main one being the Sobremesa Brûlée, along with the Brûlée Blue and the Wagashi. But when Steve came to me very recently in the last year and said, Tim, exactly what kind of cigar do you want to make? I said, I've had a lot of time to think about this, and it seems like something a little more medium strength. It's something that's not like well filled out in the catalog. There's not a ton of medium strength blends. Probably the main one that to me seems medium strength would be the original Sobremesa Solida. I said, Steve, something really medium strength, middle of the road, yet still complex and interesting. That would be the main goal for me. Now, that was really the end of what I inputted into the cigar making process. And then there's the actual naming of the cigar, which I will explain, but give me a second. You see, I've seen Steve make these blends for other purveyors that just every single one of them seems like a knock it out of the park, A+ brand and blend that I've got to try. And some of the ones I've mentioned in this video are those exact ones. And when Steve and I talked about the name and image and idea behind Leche Buddha, he gave me the mission. He said, Tim, I want you to come up with some names and I want you to send them to me. He even gave me a list of criteria, some things that a good cigar name, brand, and story should really have. After that conversation, I took the criteria for making a cigar name and I treated it like it was my dissertation, my 400 level collegiate degree work that I needed to get that piece of paper and graduate. I came up with some cigar names that I thought were absolutely banging. And Steve hated all of them. Every single one. In fact, I didn't even hear from him. Lafferty just called me and said, Tim, he hates 100% of these. And pretty quick, Steve and I got on the phone and he said, Tim, what do you really want behind this cigar name? And one of the things that I pointed out to Steve is I said, Steve, I've noticed that for whatever reason, a lot of your very well done, well received blends and brands seem to be centered around food. Things like Brûlée, Red Meat Lovers, the Polpetta. There's just sort of a food theme in the catalog that really seems to complement these complex flavor profiles that Steve creates. And he went away to Nicaragua and came back, I think it was a couple of months later, and he said, Tim, I've got it. I've got the name. We're going to call it Leche Buddha. And I kind of looked it up and said, doesn't that mean donkey's milk? And wouldn't milking donkeys mean that he said, Tim, Leche Buddha is the name of a popular Nicaraguan caramel candy that people absolutely love in the country. It's part of their culture down there. And so I actually had, at the time, believe it or not, a Nicaraguan staff member here at the Cigars Daily HQ, and she tracked down some of this candy for me. When I got the chance to try it, I saw the vision that Steve explained to me. A cigar that presents with nice body and sweetness, a little caramel flavor note in there, something really bright, something really special. And so we started moving forward with the brand. And at this point, I found out something that I didn't realize was possible. In fact, one of the things that impresses me the most about Saka. To this day, Saka still doesn't have a graphic artist that works for him. I can't think of a brand or a cigar maker that doesn't have somebody who does their own graphic art. But for Dunbarton, Steve does all the graphic art. He does it himself. And that's pretty impressive. To be as good at blending and making a cigar as you are at creating a box and the packaging and everything that goes along with a cigar, that's a very special set of skills. And so over time, I have gotten to see images of what the packaging on Leche Buddha is going to look like. And it's not going to look like this. In fact, Steve and I had a conversation a little while back about what to do with Leche Buddha this year, because our option was either to create pre-packaging, pre-release, limited edition cigars, or to come along with the packaging and release it when it was ready. And if we were going to wait for the packaging, it would have pushed the cigar off by months or even another year. A very long time we would have had to wait to get the cigar out. And I said, Steve, I think that the cigar is the highest value here, and I want to move forward with you right away, as the cigar is. And from all of that, Leche Buddha has been born. Now at this point, I've smoked a few samples of them. In fact, the only thing I could even be remotely miffed about is I know Steve has got smoked way more of these than I have, and he's been raving about the cigar all over the internet. And so this is one that I've got come down the pipelines, and I'm very, very excited to have it again. I got my tracking information. I'm going to be watching it like a hawk. I've got more to tell you about this stuff, and of course there are lots of questions to answer along the road, but I'll summarize it all this way. Working with Steve was a privilege for me. It felt like a real, a get for as a lover of cigars. Like thinking all the way back to 10 plus years ago when I used to just roll cigars on my own at home for myself. And when I got into the cigar industry, I'd roll once in a week in a cigar shop to people. They'd come buy my crappy cigars and enjoy them just because I was there. And then getting into the cigar industry and really wanting more than anything to be a part of the cigar making world, and then living long enough to regret it and see that cigar making is a logistic nightmare, a terrifying thing to do that nobody should consider even entering into, and it's psychotic to even want to do that, to now being absolutely privileged to work alongside Saka to create a project that I think is going to create many memorable experiences for lovers of Dunbarton and members of the Cigars Daily Nation. And so I'll tell you guys more on Rumble N+, but this is my experience. Today, Steve Saka is still who he is. Unapologetically Saka. He's the Saka Squatch. He's the Saka Khan. He's a guy that's got a lot of respect in this industry, and like I said, is loved and hated. And I don't think that bothers him. But over here, I am grateful for the opportunity to work with a guy that I consider to be one of the masters of his craft, a savant level guy at doing all this stuff. And I'm not trying to just kiss his ass. I'm trying to speak from the heart on a project that's been very special to me. And so drop your comments and questions down below, whether you're a lover or a hater. It doesn't bother me, and I'm sure it doesn't bother Steve. And of course, check this video out on Rumble and on the community on Cigars Daily Plus. Thank you all so much for watching. This is Tim, waiting on my tracking number. I'll see you all in the comments.